The masses are so quick to follow trends because they are incapable of original thought. They fear failure and rejection so much that they only choose what they consider to be safe, and that is by doing what everyone else is doing. This way, they stand the least chance of being embarrassed instead of running the risk of being themselves.
We set up a hidden camera experiment to see if this woman would stand up at the sound of this tone, simply because everyone else is. You might be thinking you'd never go along with this. Or would you? After just 3 beeps, and without knowing why she's doing it, this woman is now conforming perfectly to the group. But what happens if we take the group away?
Elaine, please.
Okay, now she's alone. The crowd is gone and nobody is watching her, except our hidden cameras. What do you think she'll do? She's now conforming to the rules of the group without them even being there. Now, watch what happens when we introduce another outsider.
Everybody was doing it, so I thought I was supposed to.
Think she'll teach the new guy what to do? We kept the cameras rolling as more unsuspecting patients arrived. And slowly but surely, what began as a random rule for this woman has now become the social norm for everyone in this waiting room.
This sort of internalized form of herd behavior is part of what we call social learning. Starting at a very early age, when we see members of our group perform a task, our brains literally reward us for following in their footsteps.
When I saw everybody stand up, I felt like I needed to join them. Otherwise, I'm like excluded. Once I decided to go with it, then I felt much more comfortable.
Conformity is how we become socialized, but it can also cause us to develop bad habits or repeat past wrongs.
And it's why even this rebel, who wasn't standing for any of this nonsense, eventually joined the ranks. And the only thing more shocking than seeing how easily conformity affects the way you act is that similar forces are subconsciously shaping the way you think.
And people, what's the life of sheep? On the one hand, it's pretty good, and on the other hand, it's kind of lousy. Because what happens to a sheep? A domesticated sheep, lives in a pen, wakes up in the morning living in a pen, maybe an individual pen or with some other sheep, maybe, who knows. Somebody, a human, of course, comes over and opens the pen and releases the sheep out into a field. Now that field, of course, is enclosed as well. It's just a pen, but just larger. And so the sheep, grazes in the field, and some dog runs over and starts barking and scaring the sheep, right? And the sheep, they start moving in one direction or another. It depends on where the dog is barking, because if the dog is barking like over here, the sheep are going to go over there. But if the dog barks over here, the sheep are going to go over there. The sheep are just reacting to the dogs. And, if you're a sheep, who knows who's controlling the dog? The dog just barks. I don't know. Do you? I bet not, right? So the sheep, right, they live their lives. They're in their pen at night. They're out in the field during the day. They're barked at and scared. And the sheep will go this way and that, arbitrarily, at least from their point of view, right? They hang out with the other sheep. They eat as much grass as they want, and every so often they get sheared, of course, which isn't really painful to the sheep. I mean, it's kind of annoying, but what happens is that thick wool that grows on the sheep, right? Every once in a while, a farmer will come and shear it all off. And there you'll have the sheep naked. I mean, if you've ever seen a sheep after it's been sheared, it looks very amusing, right? Before it was like this fluffy thing, and now it's scrawny and little, and of course it's cold because it doesn't have its wool anymore. But, that's the life of sheep, right? All right. Now, on the one hand, it's actually pretty nice. It's a pretty nice life if you think about it. You don't have to worry about where food is coming from. You don't have to worry about making any big decisions. You don't have to worry pretty much about anything. You just live your life, and yeah, you run when the dog barks, yeah? You don't have to stay at night, in the pen, and maybe it's not that comfortable. You're hanging around with the other sheep, and maybe you don't like the other sheep, and you wish you could change your company. But, all in all, it's a pretty good life now, isn't it? It's a pretty easy life now, isn't it? It's comfortable, right? On the other hand, of course, you realize that sheep have no agency whatsoever. They're slaves to their owners, the farmers and the dogs that bark at them. They do whatever the farmer wants, either by direct order from the farmer or by the intervention of the dog, who after all is an agent of the farmer. Yeah, and the possibilities of making an allegory about the situation are endless. I mean, hell, Pink Floyd's Animals, Roger Waters' little magnum opus Before the Wall, that was all about that conundrum. And of course it's horrifying because you have no agency. You have no agency, you have no free will. You are essentially a slave, right? But a comfortable slave. Most people are sheep. Most people are comfortable in their slavery. And you think, and you've been told that you live in a free society. You don't. You don't live in a free society. Okay? And your shackles, of course, they're not like a sheep's pen or something like that. Your shackles are debt. Your shackles are worrying about not crossing the law and not getting arrested. Your shackles are other people's expectations. Your shackles are innumerable. And what's more interesting is that, see, the shackles that you have are far more powerful than the iron shackles of a slave, of a real slave, of an outright slave. I mean, if you think of like black people in the 19th and 18th century being slaves, shackled, feeling all miserable as they came on the boat from Africa to the Americas, right? If you think of that as the stereotypical imagery of the slave, all shackled on that boat, right? Well, the shackles you have today are far worse than those chains. Oh yeah. Because see, the sheep of today, or let me rephrase that, the sheeple of today, the slaves of today, don't realize that they're in shackles. At least the slaves that came from Africa, they knew what was going on, and they were under no illusions. They weren't fooling themselves. They were like, yep, I'm a slave. Yeah, see these shackles on my ankles? See these shackles holding my wrist together? Yep, I'm a slave. Africans who came over on the boat, they did not have any illusions, but the people today, they're fooling themselves. They're so foolish as to think that they have actual free will. They are so foolish as to not see the chains that bind them because they're comfortable. And they've been told a nice story, a nice fairy story that makes them believe that they are free, but they're not.